I'm Nicole Wilburn. I'm a writer and story nerd, and I have been past little while editing my book, which I call Smuck for affectionate, cute, short name, I guess. Project Smuck. I wrote the first draft in February, did what I'm calling draft 1.5 or 2, like the first couple weeks of March, sent that over to an editor, got her feedback, got a bunch of beta reader feedback, and now I'm working on, we're just going to call it draft 3. And my goal for this draft is to really get the characters down and then to deal with some of the plot holes that were in my first draft. So we're talking about the characters right now. And I truly believe that the best stories really do come from the characters, the character development. And so I prioritize that a lot. You'll see that I chose the whole new direction of my story based on character wants and needs, and I'll link that video up here. Now I'm looking not so much at the protagonist, but at all of the other characters, the entire ensemble. So I have actually started using Notion for all of this, and I am absolutely loving it. So I am going to pull it up. I have been creating, for the most important characters, giant Notion pages for all of them. So we have Lena, who's the main character. Maisie is very important. We have two other characters here, and then I have a general one called the crew. So I'm going to talk you through first. Let's talk about the things that I have done for my main character. And I will show you the Notion page, but things will be, blanked out. So for my main character, and if you're interested in seeing like an in-depth video on using Story Genius for her, let me know. Because I basically did the Story Genius method. I went through each chapter one by one and did the exercises more or less, all in the second part. I didn't do the third part bit because I'm kind of doing that now, my outlining and writing. But the second part of all developing the misbelief, all of that I did. So what's really cool about Notion is that I was able to link everything here. So I have a little bit of a table of contents if there's something I need to access quickly. I think eventually I'm going to add this and turn it into a little bit of a character wiki with information on like what she looks like, just so it's there. I have her family structure in here, so all of her siblings' names. I have a picture that inspires me of the character, yada, yada, yada. So for Story Genius, the first exercise is to write about what she wants. So we fill that in. Again, it's what she wants very specifically. So I kind of chose and focused on a moment that she would want. I wrote out why she wants it, and I wrote up the definition of her misbelief. Then in here, and these are so useful, and I honestly didn't think they would be useful, I have 3 origin scenes of her misbelief. All written right in the Notion. It's not the best word processing, but for organization and getting to things quickly, I'm absolutely loving it. So all of these origin scenes, or this origin scene, is literally about how the character's misbelief was formed. And you write this scene of the origin of her misbelief, like when she connected those things together. And what I really think about the Story Genius is super cool is that they really focus on cause and effect. They're saying, she didn't form out of nowhere. What did she think before? How did this scene change her? And what does she think after? And it doesn't just stop there either. After the origin scene, I go through and I write out the turning point scenes. So these are scenes that really enforced the misbelief. I don't think the origin scene will make it into the book, but I do think that these turning point scenes probably will, because they're super important to her. For some of my other characters, I don't think I have anything for Luke's right now. But for Gianna, who's my antagonist, I have some fun things for her. Again, it's mostly backstory right now. I wrote down a song that inspires her. I actually saw this really cool play when I was at the Edinburgh Fringe stand-up comedy act called Bloody Mary, where she was the actress was Bloody Mary doing stand-up comedy as herself. And there was a moment at the end where I was like, that is my antagonist. And it's kind of funny, but I ended up stealing Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary's story for a lot of this character's backstory. If that's not a spoiler, it's not incredibly important to the story. Obviously, she's not a Tudor princess, but I found that really interesting, loved it, and was like, this fits. The most important thing that I've been doing with characters, besides going through each one, writing the notes, writing the backstory, is this little button called the crew. And this is the coolest thing that I'm loving. So, the crew. We have a heist crew. We have an ensemble cast of characters. This is the point where we kind of say, like, didn't you have any of this information before you wrote the first draft? Because I am a plotter, not necessarily a discovery writer. And so I had some of it, but then having written the first draft and gotten feedback, I knew that some of it had to change. Some of it needed to be made a little bit more concrete. And then there were certain characters who I felt like people weren't understanding as much as I wanted them to, or they were a little too wishy-washy, or they weren't standout enough. So all of this work is really about me trying to make my characters very, very specific, very, very, like, this is specifically who they are. This is specifically what they want. This is specifically their personality. Which brings me to, and I did steal this idea from Michelle Schusterman, who I absolutely adore her videos. If you don't watch her, you must go watch her. Her video about writing a multi-POV novel is possibly the best video on AuthorTube. That's a big statement to make. I have watched that video like 15 times. It inspires me to write. It's so interesting. I put it on in the background all the time. I love that video so much. And in that video, she does this chart for her characters. I think she does want, need, and secret in that video. So you have the characters as the columns, and you have characteristics type things as the rows. I took everyone who is the least bit significant and put them on the top row here. And then in my columns, I have want, fear. Oh yes, in Michelle's, she does motivation. I found that flipping from this is their motive to their fear works better. It's interesting. I took this management course once, and they told us that the prospect of gaining something isn't quite as powerful as the prospect of losing something you already have. So I think that, to me, and to potentially other people, fears are almost more powerful than wants, which is why I include that fear there as the main motivating factor. If you're afraid of something, if you're afraid of losing something, you're much more likely to act and act towards that than if you want something. Okay, so we do want, we do fear, we do misbelief. This is very similar to weakness in Anatomy of Story if you follow that methodology. And then, of course, need. Then we have secrets. So exciting. Not all of the characters have secrets, but some of them do. I have role. So archetype could work. So things like the newbie, the mastermind, inside man, the hacker, the mark, yada, yada, yada. Because it's a heist and I want to make sure I'm following the conventions of a heist story, they have these archetype characters, and so I just put them in there. I have variation on the theme. So this is, again, an Anatomy of Story concept that I absolutely love. And what is your moral argument? What is your theme? And how do each of the characters embody that? If the characters don't have any take on the theme, then why? Why are they in the novel, really? So I've kind of listed out, and this is still fairly wishy-washy. I think theme always is a little bit, but how all of the characters are going to approach the theme. We then have the Enneagram, because I really enjoy the Enneagram types. I find them super helpful, super useful for just narrowing in on the what is truly motivating the character, what the character's essence really is. And I always use Enneagram.com for this, and I'll take a little bit of a quote from the website and put it with the character where it seems relevant. So say, for example, Challenger concerned with justice but not limits or rules. Very interesting. And the last one, which I just added today, and I will keep adding Rose to this most likely, is personality. And I want a one-word personality, how someone else would describe them. Nervy, laid back, serious, nerdy, extravagant, tough, yada, yada, yada. And so that is what I'm doing for defining all of my characters and their differences. There's one character in particular. So Lena has an old mentor, and Lena has a new mentor in this. Mentorship is also a really big theme in this novel. The old mentor, I have nailed down. Her Enneagram type really helped with that. I feel like I understand her. The new mentor, I had a direction for her, and now I am questioning it because I need to make sure that that character is doing the right thing for Lena, the thing that I need for Lena, which makes me wonder if I need her to be like Lena. If we look on a scale of to be unspecific, super laid back to super intense, should she be near Lena's level on the scale? Should she be way more laid back? Or should she be way more intense? I don't know. Still thinking about that and how those corners of opposition will work for her. But that's what this chart is really, really good for, is making sure that we have all the right kind of conflict coming at her. And then finally, my literal favorite part of what I've been doing with these scenes is my what if questions. And I got this idea from a podcast with Lee Bardugo, and she said that she went through and wrote down what all of her characters would do in a bar fight scene. And I was like, interesting. So I have my what if section. What if they were in a bar fight? And I went through the entire crew and wrote what they would do. And then I had a couple of other options, like, what if they had access to weed? What if they got lost in a forest? What if they pulled off a heist at a German mansion? What if they yada, yada, yada? And I wrote out what everyone would do. And that really helps me get to the basis of their personality, and I think will help me in future scenes when I'm trying to be like, okay, we have this situation. What is happening next? And then finally, I went through for all my members of the crew, and I wrote a big description of their relationships one-on-one. How does each person interact with every other person? What's really interesting with this crew, and what I found was really lacking in my first draft, was they all just seemed like people thrown together. I didn't feel a sense when I was rereading it of shared history, right? Friends have stories. They have inside jokes, they have this shared history together, and I felt like I needed to really dig down deep, think through those things. What were they doing when they were together? What were they doing when they were apart? How did they each interact with each other? Who are they one-on-one? How do their personalities meet? Who's friends? Who doesn't? Who fights? That kind of thing. And really get that, so when the reader and Lena, my new character, come into that environment, they're really like, oh wow, I'm walking into this thing that's already established. Okay, so that is all of the ways I've been developing my characters for editing after the first draft. What kind of things do you do to develop your characters, to get to know your characters better, and to dive deep on them? I'd be so interested, so cool to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you aren't subscribed, you should do it if you like this kind of content. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.